So now that we have created the profile model here, now we need to go ahead and create the forms to actually go ahead and edit that particular profile model. And the way in which we want the profile model to work is that whenever we go ahead and create a new user, the profile for that particular user should automatically create it. So whenever a new user is registered on our website, the profile for that particular user should be created. And also once the profile is created, the user should actually be able to manually go ahead and create their profile. So in the previous case, we had created the profile from an admin panel, but we don't want that. Instead, we want the user to be able to go ahead and create their very own profile from the website instead. So let's learn how to go ahead and do that. So that means, first of all, we have to create a form so that users could actually use that particular form to create a profile. So let's go to the forms.py file here in the user model, and in there, first of all, we have to go ahead and create two forms. So the first form is going to be for editing the user, and the second form is going to be for editing the user profile. So here, first of all, let's import the profile. So in there, let's import the profile model. So from .model or .models, import the profile model. And once we have imported the profile model, let's create that form at the top itself. So let's say we want to create a form for editing the user. So user edit form, this is going to be first form. So this is going to be a model form. So I would say forms.model form, and this basically is going to target the model, which is user. So let's pass some meta information. So we are going to say that the model this thing is going to target is going to be the user model. And now let's type in the fields which we want to target in this particular thing. So if you actually go to the user model, so if you go to your web browser, if you go to users, this is not running as of now, and I guess we need to restart the server for now. Go back here. And as you can see right now, we have the username and email, and we also have the first name and the last name as well. So let's say we should be able to edit the first name, last name, as well as email. So here I would say first_name as one of the field which we want to edit from the form. Then we also want to be able to edit the last name as well. And then finally, we want to be able to edit the email as well. Once this thing is done, that particular form is ready. Now right away, let's also create a form for profile as well. So in the profile, we simply have to edit the photo. So I could simply copy this, paste it up over here, and just change a couple of things. So instead of user, I would say profile edit form. This is going to be a model form. The meta information is going to target the model, which is the profile model. And in here, we only want to be able to edit the photo. So I would only say photo here. So once these two forms are created, now we are pretty much good to go. Now the way in which we want the flow to work is that, let's say when I go ahead and when I register a new user, so right now it's giving me an error for some reason. Okay, and that's because there should be a comma here, it seems. Okay, now it's running well, so make sure that you add a comma there. Okay, so once this thing is done, now the way in which we want everything to work is, whenever you go ahead and register a new user, a new profile should be created. So if we go to the views here, the register is nothing but register is the code in which we basically go ahead and register a user, that is, we create a new user in our website. So here is where we actually go ahead, create a new user and save that. So as soon as a new user is saved, I also want to go ahead and create a new profile for that user as well. So in order to create a new profile here, I actually need to go ahead and import the profile model. So I would say from .models, import the profile model. And then in order to create a new profile, we first have to create an object of the type profile. So I would say profile dot, and then I would say objects dot create, which means we have to create an object. And then for this, I would take the new user which I have created and simply pass it to the profile model. So here I would say user equals new user, and we are passing this because if you actually take a look at the model here, this profile model actually needs to have a user, and that's what we are basically doing here. That is, we are basically creating a profile object right up over here. So this particular line of code is going to create a new profile object, save it into a database, which means essentially we are creating a profile for that particular new user. Okay, so once this thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. Now, just as we have this register view, and that's actually registering this particular form right here. Now let's go ahead and let's create an edit view, and that edit view should allow us to edit both the user as well as the profile models. So here, in order to create that, I would go ahead and go at the bottom and say def edit. Let's type in request, and this particular edit view should be able to render out these two forms which we have created, which is the user edit form and the profile edit form. So here, in order to render those out, I have to go back to the views and first import them. So here I would say from dot forms, I want to import the user edit form. Let's also import the profile edit form as well. So profile edit form. Okay, so once that thing is done, I could go down here and let's start working on this view. So first of all, we are going to handle the post request as usual. So here I would say if request.method, if this is equal to post, in that particular case, we basically want to get the form data and then post that data and create a user profile from that. So here, first of all, let's get access to the user form. So I would say user form is going to be equal to user edit form, which means that we want to be able to edit the data for the user. And in here, the instance is going to be nothing but request.user, because this particular thing needs to access the user object to be able to edit the details for the user. So here I would say instance equals request.user, and then the data which it's going to get, it's going to get the data from the form. So the data is going to be request.post. That means we are getting the posted data, saving it into the data, and we are getting the user instance and saving it into instance. Now we do the same thing with the profile form as well. So here I would say profile form, and this is going to be profile edit form. So profile edit form, and then similarly we pass in the instance as the request.user. So we say request.user here. That means we are getting the instance for the currently logged in user. So this actually gives us the user, but here, as this is a profile form, we want to get the profile of the logged in user. So we say request.user.profile, and then the data, as usual, we are actually going to get it from request.post. So here I would say data is request.post. So we are getting the data from the form. And also, as in this particular profile form, as we are working with an image, we also need to get access to the files as well, which is nothing but the image file. So here I would also add a files field, and just like request.post, I would simply type in request dot, that's going to be files. Okay, so once this thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. And as these two forms are getting the data from request.user, which means that we are getting the data from the currently logged in user, that means this will only work when the user is logged in. And henceforth, let's add a login required decorator on top. So here I would say add login underscore required, and that should do the trick. Okay, so now once we have the data from both the forms, which is the user form and the profile form, now once the user has edited both of these data, we now have to go ahead and check the validity of the data. And if we found these two forms to be valid, then we could go ahead and save that data. And doing that is quite simple. I would simply say if user form dot is underscore valid, and I would also check the validity for profile form in the same line. So here I would say if profile form dot is underscore valid, if both of them are valid, in that particular case I simply have to save the data in the two forms. So I would say user form dot save, and then profile form dot save as well. And once that thing is done, we are pretty much good to go, and we are done handling the post part of this. Now let's write the else, which means what happens when the request method is get. So when the request method is get, we essentially want to go ahead and render out those particular forms. And while rendering out those forms, we are simply going to have these two forms. So let's copy this, paste it up over here. But when the request method is going to be post, we only have the data for the logged in user, but we don't have this additional data here. So let's get rid of that data from here. And let's also get rid of that data from here as well. And the reason why we are keeping this particular request.user and request.user.profile is because we get that particular data from the currently logged in user's instance. That's why we keep it. And once that thing is done, we simply render out the templates. So here we say return, render, and now let's pass in the request. And we have not yet created any kind of template for these two particular forms. So let's create a template in users and let's call this particular template as edit.html. And now let's pass in two forms. So in the previous case, we have rendered only one form inside a template like that. But in this particular case, as we have two forms, we have to pass in these two forms here. So first of all, we'll pass in the first form, which is the user_form, and then say user form, and then give a comma right away, and then say profile_form. Pass this thing as profile form. Once this thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. And what we are essentially doing here is that we are rendering the two forms both on one page, but it will look like they both are actually one single form, but in reality they are actually part of two different forms. So once this thing is done, let's go ahead and let's create the template, which is users/edit.html. So in here, inside templates, let's create a new file that's going to be edit.html. This is going to contain the basic boilerplate code. So let's take some code from here, or let's actually take the code from some other file which actually has a form like the password reset form. So let's use that so that we could save some time writing the basic boilerplate code. And here let's remove the valid link. Let's remove the else part as well. Let's remove the if. And in here we have the basic form. Let's add a heading which says something like edit profile form. And instead of saying form as P, the name of the forms which we have passed here are user form and profile form. So here I would say form.user_form, and similarly let's create one more form there. That's going to be profile_form. So I would replace this with profile. Once that thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. But now, as one of the forms is actually submitting an image, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and whenever we are making a post, we have to add additional parameter which says enc type, and this is going to be multi-part /form data. Once that thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. We have the template in place, we have the forms in place, we also have the views, and the view which is going to render this template is the edit view, which means now we have to create a URL pattern for this particular edit view. So doing that is quite simple. Let's go to urls.py file, give a comma, add the last URL, add a path. This path is going to say something like edit / and this is going to render the view which is edit. So views.edit, let's name this as edit as well. Give a comma at the end and we should be good. So now if I go back here, if I go to users / edit, I get the edit profile form, and for some weird reason we are not getting the forms here, which is the user form and the profile form. So let's see why that is the case. So it says, okay, so I made a mistake here. This should be userform.p, not form.this. So this should be .as_p, and this should be .as_p as well. Okay, so also make sure that you have space here. Okay, so now let's hit refresh, and as you can see, we also have this form here which allows us to edit all the details. So right now we are logged in as the super user, and we could edit the first name, last name, and we could also upload another image for that user as well. So let's say I want to add the first name and last name. So I've added the first name and last name. Let me edit the email address, and let me also choose a image. So let's say I choose a different image this time. And now if I now click on submit, let's see what happens. So I've hit submit here, and now let's see if those changes are reflected in the admin. So I'll go to admin, I'll go to users, and as you can see now we have the first name and last name added for the user. And also if I go to profiles, the profile for this user is created, And now as you can see, the image for that particular user or the profile image has also been changed, which means that this is working well. Now one more thing which we need to check here is that if we go ahead and register a new user, we want to see if the profile for that user is automatically created or not. So let's test that as well. So let's go to users/register. Let's register a new user. So I would type in the username. So I've added some details of a user here, and now if I click on register, it says registration successful. Now let's go to admin. If I go to profiles, now as you can see, the profile for user Pat has now already been created. And now if I want to add the profile picture for Pat, I simply have to go ahead and go to users/edit. Here I'm not able to edit the user. That's because I'm currently logged in as a super user. So I would log out. Let's log back in. Now this time let's log in as Pat. Submit. Now let's go to users/edit. And here let's edit the last name. Let's choose a profile picture for this user. Click on submit. Now the user profiles are saved. Now if I go to admin, let's see if that is saved. So I'll log in as the super user. Now once I'm logged in here, if I go to profiles, if I go to the profile for Pat, as you can see that particular image is uploaded, and we also have the profile for Pat. If I go to users, I should also be able to have the last name added for Pat as well, which means that now the functionality for registering the user, creating the user, logging in the user, logging them out, even creating their own profile as well as profile picture is now complete. And from the next lecture onwards, let's work on creating the functionality so that these users could now create their very own posts. So let's learn how to do that in the next lecture.